So let's bring in our panel on the significance of all this. Alexandra Smith is an executive director at America Rising PAC and former national chairman of the College Republican National Committee. Isaac Wright is a partner at Forward Solution Strategy Group and a Democratic strategist. Welcome to both of you.
Thanks for having us.
Good to be here.
Isaac, to you first. You know, he said he didn't want to answer the questions the first time around because they were delving into his life as a private citizen. And, you know, if you've seen what happens to some of these people who testify about wrong dates or wrong times, or did I get this email or did I get that email, isn't that kind of understandable?
No, I mean, there was an 18-month gap that he refused to answer questions about, at which time he was claiming how close he was and still in communication with Donald Trump and the Trump team. So there's some pretty big red flags there that there's a period that he, Bannon, and Hope Hicks all refused to talk about. Bannon and Hicks have said they've been instructed by the White House not to talk about it. So the question is, what is Donald Trump hiding? We know that Jared Kushner lied on security briefings about his meetings with Russia. We have seen all of these things. 100 indictments have rolled down so far. We've seen 3 guilty pleas. What is Donald Trump working so hard to hide that he is instructing, that he's having the White House instruct people not to answer the questions?
Well,
and why, for that matter, is Nunes not subpoenaing these people? The committee, the majority in the committee, like Nunes, have the power to force them to answer. They could have done it that day in January with Bannon. They could have done it that day in January with Lewandowski. They could have done it just a couple of weeks ago with Hicks. But the majority on the committee, Nunes, who has his own ties to Trump and to the transition team and to Flynn, who's pleaded guilty, has refused to do so.
Well,
why the cover-up?
All right. The worth pointing out that the 3 guilty pleas do not have anything to do with the presidential campaign at this point. They have to do with Rick Gates and Paul Manafort's activities as businessman and a lawyer as well.
And lying to the FBI.
All right. Alexandra, so do you take a lot of significance from Corey Lewandowski's return to the committee?
Well, look, I mean, Corey Lewandowski is entitled to prepare for these hearings. As you mentioned, there's a lot at stake when you testify before a committee like this. So the fact that he wanted to engage in some additional preparation isn't unusual, in my opinion. But I think that it's important to remember, and something that really gets lost in this entire discussion, is that the reason why we're even hearing from Corey Lewandowski or Hope Hicks or Steve Bannon or any of these people who have testified before any of these committees is that the House Republican, the Republican-led committees have allowed for it to happen alongside a special prosecutor who's working under the executive branch. So you have a Republican-led White House and a Republican-led Congress who are allowing these investigations to continue. It's incredibly important that we figure out what happened in 2016, and to the extent that Russians or Americans were involved in trying to spread misinformation and influence our elections. Only Americans should decide American elections. But that being said, I think looking ahead to 2018, we need to ensure that this doesn't happen again. And so far, our national security leaders have raised the red flags that it can and it will happen again.
All right, I got to ask you to keep your answers tight. Real quick, Isaac, she says the Republicans are being transparent here. Do you give them credit for that?
Absolutely not. They've refused to answer questions on behalf of the administration. Hope Hicks, Steve Bannon, Corey Lewandowski. Lewandowski, I would remind you, a month ago said he would refuse to come back and testify and answer the questions and the gaps he refused to testify about in January. And the Nunes committee has overtly failed to subpoena these people when they had the power to compel them to tell the truth. They refused to. Not to mention they put out a misleading memo that later had to be debunked and corrected by the Schiff memo from the minority on the committee that actually put out the truth and information out there. Why all the smoke screens? Why is there such a coordinated effort to pull the wool over Americans' eyes about what happened and the threat that still faces our country?
Alexandra, I suspect you see it differently.
I mean, look, none of these people is acting under a subpoena. They're coming back. They're testifying. We're trying to figure out this problem. But look, looking ahead to 2018, this is where we really need to be concerned. Whether it's the Director of National Intelligence, the Director of the CIA, or the National Security Advisor, they all say that foreign agents are looking to influence our 2018 elections. That's just a few short months away. And, you know, rather than sort of engage in the partisan spectacle that this has become, I would rather that we focus our efforts on making sure that this doesn't happen in this critical election coming up.
Yeah, let's
we
make
can
sure it
agree
doesn't
the Trump
happen again.
administration should be taking action to make sure
right.
it doesn't happen again. They're not. But why the cover-up if nothing wrong happened?
We are going to have to leave it there. Isaac Wright and Alexander Smith, thank you both.
Thank you very much.